Everybody has some level of anxiety over what our AI future will look like. Somewhere between Skynet and a post-scarcity utopia, the most immediate concern for most people is that this technology will end up doing their job better than they can. So far, one side of the argument points out that big new technologies in the past have only ever made economies wealthier, and whatever jobs they replace, they end up making more, better jobs somewhere else. The other side argues that, yeah, sure, when we replaced our muscles with machinery in the past, it let us leverage our minds, which are clearly what humans have invested most of our evolutionary traits into. But if machines replace that, what else do we have left to offer? Now, nobody can predict the future, least of all economists. But we don't really need to, because there are certain economies that are going to see the widespread impacts of these changes well before most others. In fact, they kind of already are. In places like the Philippines and Bangladesh, the threat of AI is much more imminent. A threat to jobs, to entire industries, and to the economic growth they've spent decades building. These economies have spent the last 30 years constructing entire industries around outsourced service work. Things like call centres, data entry, transcription, and basic software support. These jobs were once considered safe from automation because they required language skills, context, and that special human touch that machines just couldn't replace. Well, it turns out machines got a lot better at replicating that human touch. Tools like LLMs can now handle those tasks in seconds at a fraction of the cost, and these jobs, which make up a big share of GDP in many developing countries, are looking like they might be the first dominoes to fall. In the Philippines, the IMF estimates that a staggering 89% of outsourced service jobs are at high risk of being automated by AI. That's over 1 million people whose jobs could disappear in just a few years. In other words, AI is already making the world's richest countries even richer, and is making it harder for everybody else to catch up. And that's just the beginning of the story. Even in rich countries, AI is starting to divide the economy into those who can leverage it and those who are going to get replaced by it. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts that roles like cashiers, bank tellers, postal staff, and customer service representatives are all on track to shrink. One estimate suggests 7.1 million jobs could disappear in the next 5 years, with up to 47% of current roles at risk of being replaced by AI. Of course, it's also worth remembering that companies and their investors have now ploughed trillions of dollars into developing this technology, so they want to eventually see a return. As heartless as it is, cutting millions of workers off payroll is probably the most immediate way to start seeing those returns. So, there is an incentive to play up the scare campaign because what sounds horrifying to most people sounds like opportunity to those actually writing the checks. But even still, the trend lines are clear. AI is already reshaping who gets ahead, who falls behind, and most importantly, how fast the gap is widening. So, as always, we've got some important questions to answer. Why is AI supercharging growth in rich countries while simultaneously threatening the economic survival of others? In a world where one person armed with AI can replace 5 people, what exactly happens to the other 4? And perhaps most importantly, can workers, or even entire economies, adapt fast enough to survive the shift? If you follow this channel, you already know that long-term investing is one of the smartest ways to grow wealth, and that consistency matters more than timing. That's why this video is brought to you by Trading212, who makes it easier than ever to get started. With their app, you can invest commission-free in real stocks and ETFs, and even buy fractional shares, so you don't need thousands of euros to start building a diversified portfolio. They've also launched a debit card that automatically invests your spare change and gives you 1% cash back on every purchase. So, every coffee, every taxi ride, every lunch break can help you grow your portfolio in the background. You can set up recurring investments, invest while you spend, and even try out everything with a practice account first, no risk, just learning. It's an incredibly simple way to turn good habits into long-term gains. Use the link in the description to download Trading212 and you'll get a free share worth up to €100 when you sign up. According to the Centre for Economic Policy Research, the US could see a 5.4% boost to GDP over the next decade thanks to AI-driven productivity gains. The UK, Germany and South Korea aren't far behind with similar projections. Meanwhile, lower-income countries are looking at much more modest gains, closer to 2.7 to 3.5%, which would be a departure from the expectations about developing countries, well, developing faster. The Philippines is a good example. For years, it's been one of the world's premier destinations for business process outsourcing. A $37 billion industry that includes customer service, billing, transcription, and tech support. The tech sector employs more than 1.3 million people and contributes over 7% of the country's total GDP. But here's the economic nightmare scenario. Most of these jobs are exactly the kind of repetitive, text-based tasks that large language models like ChatGPT are rapidly learning to automate. Jobs in the Philippines are at high risk of being replaced by AI, and it's already happening. Roughly 2/3 of outsourcing companies in the country are now using AI tools to cut costs and speed up workflows. Major US companies like AT&T, Google and Accenture outsource work to the Philippines, but if AI can perform the same task faster and cheaper and without requiring health insurance, vacation days or human resource departments, those jobs will be amongst the first casualties. Bangladesh is in a similar boat. Its outsourcing sector has grown to 400 firms employing over 80,000 people, but the vast majority of that work still centres around customer service, transcription and data entry, which again is precisely the kind of job that AI is becoming increasingly capable of automating. If AI can deliver the same quality of work at a better speed for significantly less money, there's simply no compelling economic reason to continue outsourcing. A single slot in a server rack could soon replace an entire call centre in Manila or Dakar, and that means companies could start to reshore, bringing jobs back to wealthy nations where local automation can rival offshore labour on price. That completely flips the script on the entire outsourcing model that emerging economies have built their entire growth strategies around for the past 3 decades, and it's a big reason why the gap between wealthy and poorer nations is set to widen after a few decades of these economies actually slowly catching up. AI also rewards exactly the kind of specialised skills that are hardest to scale globally. Building and training large AI models requires advanced education, reliable municipal infrastructure, and access to advanced technologies. Those resources are overwhelmingly concentrated in wealthy nations. That means the most valuable AI jobs are also the least accessible to workers in emerging markets. And when workers in those countries do manage to gain access to those highly sought after skills, they often don't stick around. Talented engineers are being recruited by global tech companies or relocating entirely to hubs like San Francisco, London, Berlin, or even centres within China. The result is an accelerating brain drain that leaves poorer nations with fewer startups, fewer teachers and researchers, and dramatically fewer chances to catch up in the global AI race. And it's clear which countries are leading that race. In short, the countries least equipped to absorb disruption are the ones getting hit first and hardest, while the countries best positioned to benefit from AI are already pulling ahead because they control the capital, infrastructure, talent, and resources shaping the future of AI. But AI isn't just dividing countries along economic lines, it's also creating stark divisions between the people within those same countries. This technology is not impacting all people in the same way. It's making some workers nearly obsolete while making others far more valuable. That's because AI represents a very specific kind of capital, and understanding this distinction is crucial for predicting its economic impact. In the past, most new technologies functioned as what economists call complementary capital, meaning these were machines and technologies that made human workers more productive. For example, a combine harvester didn't eliminate farm workers, instead it made each individual worker dramatically more efficient. Before mechanisation, harvesting a single field might require 20 people working for several days, while with a harvester, one person could do the same job in a fraction of the time. Labour and capital worked together, and as productivity increased, so did wages and living standards. Workers remained essential to the process, they just became much more productive. For many high-skilled roles, AI will become more complementary capital, boosting productivity without replacing the human worker. A financial analyst using AI to scan reports and spot anomalies can get insights faster and can focus more time on strategic thinking. A doctor leveraging AI for diagnostics can spend more time on direct patient care. In these cases, AI multiplies what skilled professionals can do and makes their expertise more valuable in the marketplace. But for more routine, process-driven work, AI increasingly acts as what economists call substitutive capital, replacing human labour altogether instead of enhancing it. An AI-powered chatbot doesn't make a customer support agent faster, it replaces them. A sophisticated code generator doesn't assist a junior developer, it replaces them. In other words, the more capable our capital becomes, the less it actually needs human labour to function. And in the AI economy, capital ownership is more concentrated than it ever has been in modern history. Most of the major breakthroughs in artificial intelligence are coming from a handful of elite firms in the US and China. Since 2017, the US has produced 135 large-scale AI systems. China's not far behind with 110, but the gap widens quickly. From there, the UK has managed 25 and France 24. And the companies leading the charge with these breakthroughs are experiencing exponential growth thanks to what is known as the data network effect. The more data they collect, the better their AI model performs, the better their model, the more users they attract, and the more users they attract, the more data they generate. This creates a powerful feedback loop where market power and profits concentrate in just a few dominant companies. PwC estimated that AI could add $15.7 trillion to global GDP by 2030, but 70% of that wealth is projected to go to just 2 countries, the USA and China, because they own AI. In 2024 alone, over 1,100 US-based AI companies raised major funding rounds. That's more than double all of Europe combined. IBM and Microsoft alone hold thousands of AI-related patents, giving them long-term control over everything from enterprise tools to foundational models. Smaller firms, even those in wealthy countries, are becoming increasingly dependent on licensing tools and models that they didn't build and don't control. And that extends beyond software. The physical machines that power AI, CPUs and GPUs, are overwhelmingly designed and manufactured in just 5 countries. More than 90% of that hardware comes from the US, Taiwan, China, South Korea, and Japan, and that means a tiny handful of countries don't just run AI systems, but also manufacture the foundational components that make AI possible in the first place. That's the reality of AI as capital. It primarily benefits those who already own the assets, while replacing those who don't. The more you can leverage AI as a productivity multiplier, the more economically valuable you become in the marketplace. But for workers in routine roles, especially those without access to retraining programs, the future is looking far less promising. Now, even if you weren't aware of these exact figures, they probably aren't surprising, and that's exactly the point. This is a reality that people are noticing. Nearly 1/3 of Americans in a recent survey said they're fairly or very worried about losing their jobs to automation. This isn't some hypothetical scenario we're speculating about. We've witnessed similar disruptions before. When industrial automation and large-scale outsourcing ramped up in the 1980s and 1990s, it hit manufacturing hard, especially in places like the US and Western Europe. In America alone, more than 7 million factory jobs disappeared between 1980 and 2010, and most of them didn't come back. These factory jobs may have been replacing US workers with Chinese workers, but there is no critical reason why human workers couldn't be replaced with clankers. The Midwest bore the brunt of this economic transformation. Cities like Detroit, Cleveland, and Youngstown were once packed with well-paying jobs in steel, cars, and textiles, but then came robotic welders, computer-run assembly lines, and cheaper labour overseas. Suddenly, those stable middle-class jobs evaporated, factories closed, unemployment spiked, and entire local economies started to fall apart. The consequences extended far beyond simple job loss. A lot of these towns saw life expectancy drop, opioid addiction rise, and schools struggled to keep up. The jobs that eventually did return often paid less and didn't offer the stability or benefits that had previously supported entire communities. The UK experienced something similar. Coal mining, shipbuilding, and steel plants across northern England and Scotland shut down as automation and privatisation took hold. Even today, places like Sheffield and Sunderland still lag behind the rest of the country when it comes to income and social mobility. The lesson is clear. Even when the long-term picture improves, the short-term impact of technological disruption can be devastating. And once inequality takes root in an economy, it becomes extremely difficult to reverse. So, what can we actually do about this looming challenge? Because at this point, it's clear that AI is already transforming the global economy, but whether it deepens existing inequality or helps us solve it depends on the actions that countries and individuals take in the coming years. First, the good news is, we can already see what's coming our way. In lower-income countries like the Philippines and Bangladesh, the frontline effects of AI are unfolding in real time. These economies show us which jobs go first, where the risks are highest, and what happens when governments act or don't. For example, the government of the Philippines has launched a national AI strategy with the goal of retraining over 1 million workers by 2028. Bangladesh, meanwhile, has released a draft policy framework focused on developing AI talent, modernising its education system, and supporting tech startups. The goal is to position Bangladesh as a competitive player in the AI-enabled services market, while safeguarding jobs through upskilling and digital inclusion programs. Whether those efforts will prove sufficient remains to be seen, but they offer a clear warning and a playbook for wealthier nations to follow. Two distinct sides of our economies need to do two things simultaneously: invest heavily into AI infrastructure and invest just as heavily into their people. This includes educational investment into computer science, yes, but also the kind of skills AI struggles to automate: critical thinking, complex problem solving, effective communication, and creative decision making. A recent analysis of 12 million job postings in the US found that AI adoption tends to increase demand for these distinctly human skills far more often than it eliminates jobs entirely. Building an accessible digital economy is equally important because right now nearly 2.6 billion people worldwide still don't have access to the internet. Without that basic connectivity, there's simply no opportunity to compete or even participate in the emerging AI economy. The World Bank estimates that every 10% increase in broadband access can boost GDP growth in developing countries by up to 1.4%, and that's before factoring in the additional benefits that AI capabilities could provide. So, along with retraining, countries need policies that expand broadband access, reduce the cost of devices, and give more people the digital skills they need to benefit from AI. Social safety nets matter too. They function as economic buffers that give displaced workers the time and resources they need to adapt, retrain, and re-enter the labour market from a position of strength. But if AI allows businesses to grow while workers lose their income, the economy starts to hollow out. Productivity rises, but consumption falls. Innovation continues, but inequality grows, and it becomes a serious drag on overall economic growth. If we want AI to boost productivity broadly, not just corporate profits, we'll need to rethink how we design and share the value it creates, and that includes fundamental questions about who gets to build AI, who governs its development and deployment, and who ultimately benefits from the massive productivity gains it generates. If you want to see just how far this could go, what happens if AI keeps getting better and most people end up with nothing of value to trade, we made an entire video about that thought experiment 2 years ago. You should be able to click to that on your screen now. Thanks for watching, mate. Bye.